Welcome to Outro, the show about shows, the show dealing with shows, the show showing you what there is about shows, at least when I'm on shows. And I of course am the writer Albert Lanier, and this is the writer Albert Lanier channel, and Outro is a production of the writer Albert Lanier channel. Speaking of Outro, which is of course this show about shows, time for this edition of Outro. And this edition is going to deal with a recent interview I did on the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. Came back to the show just this past Monday. So it's a couple days since. I normally do this. I try to do it immediately after I've done an interview, but it doesn't have to be. So I was on the Life with Joey Calvo show. And you can check that out on the Life with Joey Calvo channel. Go to his channel on YouTube. I think it's Life with Joey Calvo. But go look up his show. Go look up Life with Joey Calvo. I'm sure that you'll find it if you do a search. And the name of the show, once again, Life with Joey Calvo. I was on the show recently. In fact, I was on the show this past Monday to talk about Kara Wayne. Now, to set this up, I had been on his show, I think last month. I've been on the show twice prior. So this is the third time I was on the show. I was on the show, I think last month, to talk about Inslaw and Promise and Danny Casolaro. And that was a good interview. Enjoyed doing the show. And it was after we did the live stream that we chatted a bit afterwards and talking about other things. And I think I had mentioned that I had written a couple of articles, one about the death of screenwriter Gary DeVore, the other about the fairly mysterious death of actress Kara Wayne. And he got really animated. He got really excited. And he said, yeah, why don't we talk about that? So he had me on again to talk about Kara Wayne. So I came back to do the show at Joey's request, and we had a good interview. Like I said, I suggest you check it out. And the thing about talking about Kara Wayne, and just for reference to those who want to check it out, I had written a piece about Kara Wayne on my newsletter, Final Cut. And I had done that in May of last year, May of 2025. It's called, I believe, The Suspicious Case of Kara Wayne, The Suspicious Case of Kara Wayne. And again, you can find it on Final Cut. You can go to allanier.substack.com. That's allanier.substack.com. I would also suggest you check out my Facebook page for my newsletters on Substack. That's the Final Cut and Retro Review Publications page on Substack. Again, Final Cut and Retro Review Publications page that you can find on Substack. You can check that out. I think I have a couple promos I recently put up for both my article, and I should also add a podcast episode I did about it in the same year. It was, I think, episode 16, same title, The Suspicious Case of Kara Wayne. You could check out that podcast also at allanier.substack.com on Substack, of course. You can also check it out on Spotify. So you can check out my podcast, Final Cut, on Spotify and on Substack. In any event, just referencing that, so if you want to check that out, you can. But I talked about not so much my piece, but about Kara Wayne herself, I should say. And for those who aren't familiar with her, Kara Wayne was an actress. I referred to her in the interview as a journeywoman actress. Her background was interesting. She was a former ice capade skater. She was a former Las Vegas showgirl. Then she made the move and transitioned to acting. And she did a good deal of episodic work in the 1960s. She was on shows like Bewitched, I Spy, I Dream of Jeannie, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Love American Style. But what she's best known for, and I think really known for, was the fact that she played the matinee lady in the series of tea time sketches with Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And that was basically how she was known. Like I said, her character really didn't have a name per se. She was called the matinee lady. That was essentially her name. By the way, hello to those in the chat. Um, so she didn't have like a formal name in the sketches that she did on the Tonight Show. But Carol Wayne was probably best known for that. According to IMDb, she was in, I think, over 100. I don't know if it was 100 sketches, but she made over 100 appearances on The Tonight Show. I think it started for her in 1967 or so, because I know she appeared as a guest on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in 67. I think while the show was still in New York. And because the Tonight Show started off in New York and then moved to LA in the 70s. So I think that the show, she was initially a guest on the show. I guess they got interested in her. Um, I'm trying to recall from my research. I don't recall what the conditions to her being hired on the Tonight Show were, but she was hired as I would call a sketch player, a bit player for the tea time sketches. I don't know. Now, I don't know if she was in any other types of sketches on the Tonight Show. When I did my research for the article last year, I did see some sketches from the Tonight Show on YouTube, but I don't recall seeing her in any other kinds of sketches. Like I said, she was a guest a few times on the Tonight Show talking to Johnny, and then of course she did the Art Fern tea time sketches with Johnny as the matinee lady. But that's what Carol Wayne was known for. And unfortunately, what happened was in 1980, Johnny, I guess you could call it a power play between Johnny and NBC. He didn't really want to do an hour and a half show anymore because the Tonight Show used to be an hour and a half. And he threatened, I think, to retire, to quit. And basically, what occurred was that the NBC agreed to cut the show back from an hour and a half to an hour. And that meant that some material was going to be cut. Obviously, a good deal of material. And some of the material that was cut included the Art Fern tea time sketches. And so Carol found herself out of, I don't know if it was the steadiest of gigs, but a steady gig. And she wasn't getting as much TV or film work. She went back to films. She had done, I think it was The Party with Peter Sellers in, I think, 65 or so, in the 60s. Most of her work, I think, was in television, but she did some film. That's why I wrote about Carol in my on my newsletter, because she was a film actress to an extent. I think a lot of her film work was, I would say, not stellar, except for Heartbreakers, which is her last film, which I reviewed on what was then the, the final cut section on, sorry, the retro review section on Final Cut. And that was reviewed previously, I think in 2024. Well, it would have to be 2024, I think. But I reviewed it, and then I did a podcast episode on Final Cut that was talking about Heartbreakers. So people can check that out if they want as well. But Carol, that was her last movie, Heartbreakers, with stars Peter Coyote and Nick Mancuso. And she gave certainly her most interesting performance, I think her best performance in anything. But what I got to do before I went on the show with Joey was I got to watch her TV work. I really hadn't seen a lot of her TV work, her episodic TV work. And someone happened to just put up a bunch of her clips on YouTube, which I thought was great. And so that was fun. And I got to see, I think, I Dream of Jeannie and I Spy and I think a little of Bewitched. So I got to see some of her TV work, which I had it when I was researching the articles. Um, the article, Suspicious Case of Carol Wayne, is, of course, about her death. And I don't know if I want to go into detail about that. I want you to kind of listen to the podcast, obviously. Go watch it. So I won't talk about what occurred in terms of her death, other than it's very clear to me that it wasn't an accident. And I go into detail as to why or talk about that on the show. So, again, what I would suggest you do, and that's the point of this show anyway, is to check out Life with Joey Calvo. It has my name attached to it. So if you go to the show, it has my name attached to it. You can check it out, Life with Joey Calvo, and then my name. And you can check it out. Go to the Life with Joey Calvo channel or go look for Life with Joey Calvo and um, and check it out. Good interview and a very interesting subject, very interesting topic. And that's it for this edition of Outro, the show that's been about shows, the show showing you that there's more to shows than meets the eye. Until next time, goodbye.